What if I told you that long before the ticking of clocks dictated our days, humanity lived in perfect sync with the world around them? Picture this: the sun wasn't just a source of light, but a giant timekeeper in the sky. The stars weren't just distant specks of beauty, but a celestial map guiding seasons and harvests. Even the steady drip of water or the slow burning of a candle could measure the passage of hours with astonishing accuracy. This wasn't just survival, it was an art form, a dance between human ingenuity and the natural world. And here's the surprising truth: these ancient methods didn't just work, they often worked better than the rigid systems we rely on today. Think about the last time you felt truly in tune with your surroundings, maybe watching a sunset or noticing how the light changes with the seasons. That subtle connection is something our ancestors understood deeply. For them, time wasn't a number on a screen, it was woven into the fabric of life itself. The Egyptians used towering obelisks as giant sundials, casting shadows that divided the day with precision. The Chinese measured nights by the steady flow of water through intricate clocks, while the Maya tracked celestial cycles with mathematical brilliance. These weren't just tools, they were reflections of a world where time moved with nature, not against it. So why does this matter to us now? Because buried in these ancient techniques are lessons we've forgotten, lessons about patience, about rhythm, about living in harmony rather than constant chase. In a world where we're drowning in notifications and deadlines, there's something profoundly liberating about rediscovering how time was once measured. It's a reminder that precision doesn't have to mean pressure, and that sometimes the oldest ideas hold the freshest wisdom. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unravel these forgotten systems, piece by piece, and you might just walk away with a new way to see your own time and your place in it. Ready to begin, let's turn back the clock to when time itself was alive. The sun didn't just rise and set, it spoke. To our ancestors, its arc across the sky was a language, telling them when to plant, when to harvest, even when to rest. Solar timekeeping wasn't about counting minutes. It was about reading the Earth's rhythms like a living clock. Take the ancient Egyptians, for example. They didn't just notice shadows, they built towering obelisks that transformed sunlight into a precision tool. As the sun moved, so did the shadows, carving the day into clear, practical segments. Morning meant the shadow stretched long and cool. Noon shrank it to a sliver at the obelisk's base. But here's what's fascinating: these shadows weren't rigid. They changed with the seasons, longer in winter, shorter in summer. Instead of fighting this variation, ancient cultures embraced it. Time breathed with the land. And it wasn't just about grand monuments. Everyday people used the sun's cues too. A farmer might glance at the position of the sunlight on a familiar rock or tree to know when to head home. Travelers watched how their own shadows lengthened to gauge how much daylight remained. Even the quality of light held meaning. The golden hue of late afternoon signaled winding down, while the sharp brightness of mid-morning meant peak activity. Compare that to today, where we're glued to digital clocks, often ignoring the world outside our windows. Back then, time wasn't separate from life, it was life. But solar timekeeping went beyond practicality. It shaped entire worldviews. In cultures from the Inca to the Druids, the solstices and equinoxes weren't just calendar marks. They were sacred moments tied to myths, rituals, and community. The winter solstice, the shortest day, wasn't just a date, it was a promise that light would return. This connection between time and meaning is something we've largely lost. Modern clocks give us precision, but they don't tell us when to pause, when to celebrate, or when to prepare. Ancient solar time did all three effortlessly. So what happened? How did we go from reading the sky to staring at screens? The shift began with mechanical clocks, which promised consistency but divorced time from nature. Yet here's the irony, even our most advanced timekeeping still relies on celestial truths. Atomic clocks, they're calibrated to the Earth's rotation. Leap seconds added to keep our artificial time in sync with the planet's actual movement. In chasing perfect accuracy, we've come full circle, proving that nature's rhythms were right all along. Maybe that's the real lesson. Time wasn't meant to be tamed, it was meant to be lived. While the sun painted time in light and shadow, another element quietly measured its passage with liquid precision: water. Imagine a world where the steady drip from a vessel could carve hours from stone, where a bowl slowly emptying became nature's metronome. Water clocks, or clepsydrae, emerged across ancient civilizations, from the bustling markets of Babylon to the scholarly halls of Greece. Unlike the sun's grand arc, these devices worked in darkness, underground, even in rain, offering a continuity solar tools couldn't match. The principle was simple yet brilliant. As water trickled from one container to another, markers inside revealed how much time had flowed. But simplicity hid sophistication. The Greeks added gears and dials, transforming dripping water into intricate public displays. The Chinese engineered multi-tiered clepsydrae with floats and bells that chimed each passing hour. What made water clocks revolutionary wasn't just their versatility, it was their democratization of time. Sundials required sunlight, but water clocks functioned anywhere, anytime. Monasteries used them to regulate prayer schedules, physicians timed pulses by their rhythm. Even the courts of ancient Athens relied on them to limit speeches, a literal time's up moment. Yet water's greatest lesson was its imperfection. Temperature changes altered flow rates, mineral buildup slowed drips. Rather than fighting these quirks, cultures adapted. The Egyptians adjusted their clocks monthly to account for the Nile's seasonal floods. This wasn't a flaw, it was a dialogue with nature, a reminder that time wasn't rigid but responsive. Water clocks also revealed a profound truth. Timekeeping wasn't just about measurement, but about meaning. In India, priests timed rituals to the last drop, believing water's flow mirrored life's sacred cycle. The Romans used clepsydrae to divide nights into military watches, each shift marked by a new vessel filling. Unlike today's sterile seconds ticking on a screen, water made time tactile, audible, alive. You could hear it drip, see it rise, feel its weight shift in your hands. This tangible connection shaped human rhythm in ways our digital age has forgotten. So why did water clocks fade? The same reason sundials did: the pursuit of precision. Mechanical clocks promised consistency unshaken by weather or wear. But in that trade-off, we lost something vital: the intimacy of time as a force woven into the elements. Today, as atomic clocks split seconds into trillions, it's worth remembering that for millennia, humanity measured life not by perfection, but by the patient, persistent flow of water, a reminder that time, like a river, is meant to move us, not just mark our days. Water clocks were marvels of ingenuity, but they couldn't capture the vast, slow dance of the seasons. For that, humanity looked upward. The night sky became an ancient calendar, its constellations shifting like clockwork over the year. In Babylon, priests tracked Venus's movements to predict floods and plantings. The Maya mapped the cycles of Venus with such precision their calculations were off by mere seconds compared to modern astronomy. Even the pyramids of Egypt align with celestial events. The rising of Sirius signaled the Nile's annual flood, a lifeline for their civilization. This wasn't just observation, it was mathematics etched in starlight. The Polynesians navigated thousands of miles across open ocean by memorizing the positions of hundreds of stars, reading the heavens like a road map. In China, astronomers kept meticulous records of comets and eclipses, spotting patterns invisible to the untrained eye. Unlike water clocks which measured hours, the stars measured lifetimes generations could pass before a particular alignment repeated. This long-view timekeeping shaped cultures profoundly. The Druids built Stonehenge to mark solstices, its stones framing the sunrise like a celestial doorway. The Inca carved pillars near Cusco that cast shadows along notches to signal equinoxes, turning mountains into timepieces. Yet star time had its own poetry. The Pleiades cluster told Greek farmers when to harvest olives. Its disappearance in spring warned Maori fishermen of storm seasons. The Lakota people named months after the behavior of animals and plants, tied to specific stars' appearances. Here, time wasn't abstract, it was a story written in the sky, connecting human lives to cosmic rhythms. Modern atomic clocks may tick with unimaginable precision, but they don't tell us when the salmon will run or the first frost will come. The stars did. So why did we stop looking up? Urban lights drown out the night sky, and digital calendars replace celestial cycles with arbitrary dates, but traces remain. Farmers still plant by the moon in some places, and sailors learn star navigation as a backup. Perhaps the real brilliance of ancient astronomy lies in its reminder: time isn't just something we measure. It's something we live, woven into the tides, the harvests, and the very stars that guided our ancestors home. While stars painted grand cycles across the heavens, there was another celestial timekeeper much closer to home, one that changed shape night after night, pulling tides and dictating rhythms of life on Earth. The moon's phases offered humanity a middle ground between the sun's daily march and the stars' yearly dance. Its 29-and-a-half-day cycle became nature's original month, visible to everyone under its glow. Ancient Mesopotamians etched lunar observations onto clay tablets as early as 2700 BCE, tracking its waxing and waning with the same precision modern scientists reserve for atomic particles. For coastal cultures, the moon was more than a calendar. It was a force of survival. The Tlingit people of the Pacific Northwest timed their fishing expeditions by the moon's pull-on salmon runs, while Pacific Islanders scheduled long voyages around tidal surges caused by full moons. Even sleep patterns shifted with lunar phases, as recent studies confirm what our ancestors knew instinctively. Humans slept less and were more active during bright moonlit nights. This wasn't just observation, it was symbiosis. The Islamic calendar still follows lunar cycles, with Ramadan's start declared only when the crescent moon is sighted, a practice echoing how Babylonian priests once declared new months from ziggurat rooftops. But the moon's greatest gift was its universality. Unlike sundials rendered useless by clouds or water clocks frozen in winter, the moon's phases were visible through fog above tree lines, even reflected in still ponds. Chinese scholars developed eclipse prediction systems using bamboo rods to model its orbit, while Mayan astronomers calculated its cycle down to minutes, their math rivaling modern measurements. And though we now understand the science behind lunar phases, something magical remains when we glance up at a harvest moon or a slender crescent. It's a reminder that long before smartphones chirped reminders, humanity shared one global clock, silver bright and hanging in the dark for all to see. What's startling is how deeply lunar time shaped culture. The word month itself comes from moon, and traditions from Japan's Tsukumi moon viewing festivals to Native American naming ceremonies honored its rhythms. Farmers planted root crops during the waning moon and above-ground crops as it waxed, a practice still followed by biodynamic growers today. This wasn't superstition, It was generations of accumulated wisdom, noting how moonlight intensity affected germination or how tides influenced groundwater. The moon's role in timekeeping reveals a profound truth. Ancient methods weren't about dominating nature's rhythms, but collaborating with them. Today, as artificial lights bleach out the night sky and digital calendars override lunar cycles, we've gained efficiency but lost a dialogue that once guided civilizations. Yet every time someone points out the full moon shining over a city's glare, that connection flickers back to life, proof that celestial timekeeping isn't just history. It's heritage written in light, waiting overhead for anyone who bothers to look up. Lunar calendars did more than mark days. They shaped how entire civilizations perceived existence itself. While modern calendars slice time into uniform blocks, ancient lunar systems embraced irregularity, with months lasting 29 or 30 days based on the moon's whims. The Hebrew calendar, still governing Jewish holidays today, adds an extra month every few years to realign with solar seasons, a practice borrowed by the Babylonians over 2,500 years ago. This wasn't inefficiency, it was adaptability. When Islamic scholars developed the Hijri calendar, they prioritized lunar purity over agricultural convenience, causing Ramadan to migrate through the seasons over a 33-year cycle. Imagine fasting during scorching summer days one year and crisp winter nights the next. Time wasn't fixed but fluid, a spiritual journey intertwined with celestial motion. What made lunar timekeeping extraordinary was its democratization. Unlike sundials requiring craftsmanship or water clocks needing maintenance, anyone could track time by glancing up. The Maori of New Zealand named each lunar month after seasonal events. Wiringa e Makronuku marked the month when earthworms surfaced, signaling planting time. In ancient China, moon phases dictated tax collections and imperial ceremonies, with officials scattering lanterns during the Mid-Autumn Festival to repay moonlight for guiding harvests. Even warfare followed lunar rhythms. Mongol armies timed campaigns around the hunter's moon, its brightness extending nighttime mobility. Yet lunar calendars revealed a profound philosophical split between cultures. Societies like the Maya blended lunar and solar cycles into intricate interlocking systems, while others embraced the moon's imperfections. The Yolngu people of Australia saw time as a spiral, not a line, each moon phase returning with deeper meaning. Compare that to today's atomic time obsession, where leap seconds trigger global tech outages because we refuse to let computers mimic nature's irregularities. Fire's role in timekeeping began where moonlight faded. Imagine Neolithic hunters crouching around flames, not just for warmth but as living clocks, the gradual consumption of a torch marking night watches. The ancient fire clock took many forms. Tibetan monks timed meditation sessions by how long incense sticks burned, while European castle guards measured shifts by candles notched at intervals. But the most ingenious may have been the Chinese incense clocks, where powdered aromatics traced intricate paths along wooden grooves, their smoldering pace dividing days into precise segments. Unlike water or shadow, fire added urgency. A burning rope dangling above a gong became the original alarm clock. Fire's flickering light also held symbolic power. Zoroastrian temples kept sacred flames burning continuously, their tending schedules mirroring celestial cycles. For Vikings, the length of a hearth's embers predicted winter's severity. This wasn't just measurement, it was alchemy, transforming combustion into chronology. Today, as LEDs outshine flames and digital timers replace candle notches, we've gained convenience but lost the primal intimacy of watching time literally go up in smoke, a reminder that every second is both creation and destruction, glowing brightly before fading to ash. Fire transformed timekeeping into something visceral. You could watch it burn, smell its perfume, feel its warmth recede as moments passed. In medieval monasteries, monks marked prayers by how much candle wax had melted, their chants syncing with the slow drip of tallow. Across the world in China's Song dynasty, artisans crafted intricate incense seal clocks, where powdered sandalwood or musk smoldered along maze-like grooves, releasing fragrant puffs at precise intervals. These weren't just tools, they were multisensory experiences. A scholar might work by the light of a notched candle, each segment's flame reminding them when to rest their eyes. A midwife could time contractions by counting how many incense sticks had turned to ash. Fire didn't just measure time, it embodied it. What made fire clocks remarkable was their adaptability. A sailor on a storm-tossed ship couldn't rely on a sundial, but a lantern with marked oil levels would burn steadily despite the waves. In Japan, slow binding ropes coated in powdered seaweed became timers for tea ceremonies, their sizzle and smoke adding ceremony to each minute. Even the depth of a candle's wax pool held meaning. 16th century Europeans called it the clock of the poor, where a penny placed on softening wax would drop with a clink when an hour had passed. This was timekeeping stripped to its essence, combustion as currency, each flicker a traded moment. Yet fire clocks also revealed time's intimacy with the body. Tibetan monks still use butter lamp clocks, where the melting of yak butter marks meditation sessions, linking breath to flame. Ancient Persians buried fire jars underground, their delayed ignition revealing how long a caravan had rested. Unlike today's sterile digital displays, these methods engaged all senses: the crackle of kindling, the tang of smoke, the heat on skin. Modern experiments confirm what these cultures knew. Our brains process sensory-rich time cues more deeply. A study found people recalling events timed by incense sticks remembered details better than those using silent clocks. The decline of fire clocks wasn't about inaccuracy. Some burned within minutes of their predicted rate, but our growing disconnect from elemental time. Mechanical clocks promised abstraction, severing seconds from substance, yet traces linger. Birthday candles still mark personal solar returns, and advent calendars count down with daily flames. Perhaps fire's greatest lesson was that time feels different when it engages the senses. An hour watching a candle burn doesn't pass like an hour staring at a screen. One is lived, the other merely endured. Now imagine a timekeeper so simple it required no flame, no water, no stars, just gravity and grains of sand. The hourglass flipped time literally upside down, its falling crystals a silent cascade of moments. Unlike fire clocks, it worked in any orientation, making it indispensable aboard rocking ships. Medieval ship captains dubbed them sea clocks, their twin bulbs unaffected by waves that scrambled pendulum mechanisms. Even Leonardo da Vinci sketched improved designs, marveling at how reliably sand flowed through a narrow waist. But here's what's astonishing. Some precision-made hourglasses were accurate to within seconds per hour. Benedictine monks calibrated them against water clocks to time sacred chants, while alchemists used miniature versions to measure reactions down to the grain. What sand lacked in sensory poetry, it made up for in democratic clarity. A farmer could turn an hourglass at dawn and know exactly when to rotate crops for even sun exposure. Chess players flipped them to limit moves, their strategies unfolding against visible time pressure. Even today, the phrase, "sands of time," endures, proving how deeply this metaphor seeped into culture. The hourglass's genius was its honesty, no hidden gears, no unpredictable drips, just a relentless, visible flow reminding us that time, like sand, slips away equally for everyone. Yet, unlike our modern obsession with counting every second, the hourglass offered something radical. permission to watch time pass without trying to control it. Hourglasses turned time into something you could hold, a silent, flowing dance of sand between glass bulbs. Unlike water clocks that froze in winter or sundials useless at night, these devices worked anywhere, from the pitching decks of Viking longships to the hushed scriptoriums where monks copied manuscripts. Their secret lay in the sand itself, finely ground marble dust, powdered eggshells, or even crushed black marble for contrast, all carefully sieved to ensure grains fell at a consistent rate. Medieval apothecaries timed potions with miniature versions, while naval captains relied on 30-minute watch glasses to coordinate crew shifts. The beauty was in their adaptability. Tilt the frame slightly, and the sand flowed faster for quick measurements. Use a narrower waist, and it slowed to stretch moments. But hourglasses did more than measure, they ritualized time. Chess players flipped them to pressure opponents, their strategies unfolding against visible grains. Churches used them to limit sermons, the last trickle prompting a whispered amen. Even the language of timekeeping changed. Phrases like, "Your hourglass is running out," entered speech, turning sand into a metaphor for life's fragility. What's striking is how democratic they were. A farmer could craft one from 2 blown glass bottles and beach sand, while royal courts commissioned elaborate versions with gold-flecked granules. Time wasn't locked away in expert hands. It sat on tavern tables and navigators' desks, equally accessible to all. Yet hourglasses also exposed time's subjectivity. 2 people watching the same flow might swear it sped up or slowed down, a quirk modern psychology confirms. Our perception of time stretches and compresses based on focus, stress, even boredom. The hourglass didn't just measure minutes, it revealed how fluid those minutes feel. Today, as digital timers count down with sterile precision, we've lost that tangible relationship with time's passage. There's no weight to a smartphone's alert, no poetry in pixels. Watching sand fall was a meditation, an invitation to ponder how many grains remained in your own glass. So how did societies align these scattered moments into shared time? Enter the bell tower's medieval internet, broadcasting hours across cities. From the campaniles of Italy to the temple bells of Kyoto, their peals synchronized daily life long before smartphones pinged reminders. A baker knew to pull loaves when the noon bell rang. Night watchmen started rounds at the curfew chime. These weren't just signals, they were sonic calendars. In 14th century Prague, the astronomical clock's hourly show drew crowds with its parade of apostles and death's skeleton tolling a bell, memento mori, in mechanical form. Public clocks became civic pride, their faces often displaying astrological signs alongside hours, marrying celestial time with human routines. The genius of bell towers was their inclusivity. Illiterate farmers could tell time by sound, and travelers set their sundials to the local bell's rhythm. When mechanical clocks arrived, their gears were literally set to follow the sun's shadow for accuracy, a hybrid of ancient and modern. This communal timekeeping fostered something we've since eroded: collective rhythm. Workers, markets, even meals moved in harmony, bound by shared auditory cues. Today, atomic clocks sync global finance down to nanoseconds, yet we've never felt more out of sync with each other. Perhaps the deeper lesson lies not in how we measure time, but in how we share it. Bells didn't just mark hours, they shaped the heartbeat of entire communities. Picture a medieval village where the first chime at dawn sent bakers to their ovens. The midday peal called laborers to rest, and the evening toll warned gates would soon lock. These weren't arbitrary alerts, they were the threads weaving individual lives into a shared tapestry. In China, drum towers beat out watches through the night, their deep rhythms guiding night watchmen and late travelers alike. The sound carried farther than any sundial's shadow or water clock's drip. making time a collective experience rather than a private measurement. Even the bells themselves held meaning. Larger ones boomed across valleys for general hours, while smaller chimes signaled local events like market openings or funerals. This communal timekeeping did something revolutionary. It synchronized society without requiring literacy or wealth. A farmer didn't need to read a clock face when the harvest bell rang. A child knew playtime ended with the Vespers chime. In monasteries, the divine office's 7 daily prayers structured life down to the minute, their bells so precise that nearby towns set their own clocks by them. But here's what's fascinating: these systems weren't about rigid uniformity. Italian cities often refused to synchronize with rivals, their campaniles proclaiming local identity as much as time. In Kyoto, temple bells struck unique sequences so residents could distinguish them in the fog. Precision mattered less than participation. The magic lay in how these rhythms blended with nature's cues. Church bells might ring prime at sunrise, but the exact hour shifted with the seasons, respecting the Earth's natural ebb and flow. Compare that to today's digital alarms blaring identically in December darkness or June dawn. Public timekeeping also fostered accountability. When the curfew bell sounded, everyone knew who was late. Markets opened under the same chime, ensuring fair competition. This transparency created trust, something our isolated smartphone timers can't replicate. Yet bell towers did more than organize, they comforted. During plagues, their steady tolls reassured the living that order persisted. In storms, their sound guided the lost. The very act of communal listening created a sense of belonging we've now outsourced to personal devices. Modern atomic clocks may be accurate to a billionth of a second, but they don't unite a town square in shared pause. Perhaps that's why some European cities still ring historic bells despite having digital alternatives, because time feels different when it's breathed in through the ears rather than glanced at with the eyes. Now consider how these rhythms shifted when humanity's survival depended not on bells but on seasons. Agricultural time moved to a slower, earthier beat, one dictated by rainfall, soil temperature, and the tilt of the planet itself. Agricultural time moved to the rhythm of the earth itself, where seasons mattered more than seconds, and the land's needs trumped any ticking clock. Picture a world where farmers didn't rush by the hour, but by the angle of the sun, the thickness of frost, or the arrival of migratory birds. The Celtic calendar, for example, divided the year not into months but into 8 festivals tied to solar events and agricultural milestones. Samhain marked the end of harvest, while Imbolc signaled the first stirrings of spring lambing. These weren't arbitrary dates, they were living responses to the land's whispers. In ancient China, the 24 solar terms system, still used by some farmers today, broke the year into micro-seasons based on temperature shifts and crop behaviors. Grain rain meant it was time to sow rice, while great heat warned of scorching days ahead. This wasn't just timekeeping, it was a dialogue with the planet. What made agricultural time revolutionary was its flexibility. A Roman viticulturist didn't prune vines because the calendar said to. He waited for the first swallow's return. The Maori planted kumara when the pohutukawa trees bloomed, their crimson flowers a natural almanac. Even rain carried timing cues. In India, the onset of the monsoon dictated when to transplant rice seedlings. This system wasn't about precision but about adaptation, reducing the stress of artificial deadlines. Compare that to modern industrial farming, where synthetic schedules override soil conditions, often leading to burnout both of the land and the farmer. But agricultural time also fostered patience. The Aztecs tracked the rainy season's arrival by observing the Pleiades' brightness. If the stars dimmed, it signaled dust in the atmosphere and delayed planting. This long-view perspective is something we've lost in an era of overnight delivery and instant gratification. Ancient farmers understood that some things couldn't be rushed, a lesson echoed in today's slow food movement. Their calendars weren't just tools but teachers, reminding us that growth happens at nature's pace, not ours. Now, shift from the sprawling fields to the stark geometry of shadows. While farmers watched seasons, others harnessed sunlight with astonishing precision. The Egyptians didn't just notice shadows, they engineered them. Their obelisks functioned as city-scale sundials, their tapering forms casting razor-sharp lines that divided daylight into 12 equal parts. But here's the twist: these hours weren't fixed. Summer hours stretched long and lazy, winter ones were brief and brisk. Instead of fighting this variability, they embraced it, aligning work rhythms with the sun's natural arc. A laborer's midday break might last longer in July's heat but shorten during December's fleeting light. This solar timekeeping wasn't just accurate, it was humane. The genius of obelisks lay in their simplicity. A passing merchant could gauge the hour by the shadow's position on nearby markers, no tools required. Temples like Karnak positioned columns to cast shadows on altars at solstice dawn, turning architecture into a celestial clock. Even today, modern heliostats and solar trackers owe their logic to these ancient innovations. The difference: we've divorced time from context. Our digital clocks tick identically in Stockholm and Singapore, ignoring latitude, season, or sunlight. The obelisk's lesson endures: time isn't one size fits all. It's a living thing shaped by the sky above and the ground beneath our feet. Obelisks pierced the sky like stone fingers tracing the sun's path, but their true genius lay in how they transformed sunlight into a sacred mathematics. These towering monuments weren't just early clocks, they were cosmic calendars hewn from granite, their shadows stitching together time, astronomy, and spirituality. Take the Lateran obelisk in Rome, originally crafted for Pharaoh Thutmose III around 1400 BCE. At noon on the summer solstice, its shadow would shrink to a precise point at its base, signaling the Nile's impending flood. The Egyptians didn't just observe this phenomenon, they engineered it, aligning obelisks with celestial events so reliably that modern reconstructions still match astronomical software predictions within minutes. What set these structures apart was their dual purpose. By day, their shadows segmented hours; by night, their tips pointed to pivotal stars used for navigation. The Temple of Karnak turned this into high art. Its central obelisk cast shadows that touched specific hieroglyphs during equinoxes, literally inscribing time into sacred texts. This wasn't mere functionality, it was a fusion of science and devotion. The Maya replicated this concept with their E-group structures at Uexacton, where pyramids framed sunrise positions at solstices and equinoxes, turning stone into a solar observatory. Yet obelisks also held a deeper secret. They anchored time to place. Digital clocks tick identically in Tokyo or Toronto, but an obelisk's shadow moved uniquely based on latitude. The Aztecs took this further. Their Templo Maya marked not just solstices but also zenith passages, when the sun stood directly overhead, a moment used to calibrate their agricultural calendar. This hyper-local timekeeping created what scholars call sacred geography, where space and time intertwined. When Constantine moved an Egyptian obelisk to Constantinople, it wasn't just loot, it was an attempt to transplant cosmic order. The shift from obelisks to animals might seem abrupt until you realize how deeply creatures shaped humanity's sense of time. Birdsong at dawn, bear hibernation, even the predictable spawning of Grunion fish under full moons, nature's rhythms offered living clocks long before pendulums swung. The ancient Greeks set their morning markets by the first crow of roosters, while Polynesian navigators tracked migratory bird routes to pinpoint distant islands. Bees, with their internal sun compasses, taught farmers when specific flowers would bloom. Unlike static obelisks, these biological timekeepers adapted dynamically. Swallows arriving earlier signaled an early spring, prompting adjusted planting. What animals added was immediacy. A sundial couldn't warn of storms, but ants building steep mounds did. The Raramuri people of Mexico still forecast rain by observing tarantula behavior, while Aboriginal Australians read emu egg-laying cycles to predict seasonal shifts. This wasn't superstition. Recent studies show how animal behaviors correlate with atmospheric changes humans can't perceive. The lesson: ancient timekeeping wasn't just about measurement, it was about listening. In a world where we've outsourced timing to atomic vibrations, there's wisdom in remembering how ospreys once set fishing schedules, or how wolves howling at dusk marked shift changes for night watchmen. These creatures didn't just keep time, they were time, their lives a mirror of the Earth's pulse. Long before alarm clocks jolted us awake, the first chirp of a warbler at dawn signaled the world to stir. Animals didn't just live by nature's clock, they were the clock, their behaviors as reliable as any sundial. The Maori of New Zealand timed fishing expeditions by the arrival of certain seabirds, knowing their presence coincided with tidal shifts. In ancient Greece, farmers set their morning tasks by the chorus of larks, while cattle lowing at dusk marked the day's end as clearly as a setting sun. These weren't casual observations, they were precise ecological timepieces honed over generations. What made animal timekeeping extraordinary was its seamless integration into daily life. The Ainu people of Japan watched for the return of the Blakiston's fish owl, its haunting call signaling the peak of salmon runs. Tibetan herders still judge midday by the angle of yak shadows as the animals gather at watering holes. Unlike mechanical clocks that demand attention, these cues worked passively. A fisherman didn't need to check a dial when seagulls started diving. Their sudden frenzy meant the tide had turned. This was timekeeping without effort, where the environment whispered its rhythms to those who knew how to listen. Yet animals offered more than punctuality. They predicted seasonal shifts with uncanny accuracy. Swallows arriving earlier than usual warned of an early monsoon in India, giving rice farmers critical extra days to prepare fields. The Tswana people of Botswana tracked the breeding cycles of bullfrogs to anticipate rains, their croaks swelling as groundwater rose. Even insects played their part. Mayan beekeepers monitored when certain flowers bloomed, knowing bees would swarm precisely 17 days later. These patterns formed a living almanac, far more nuanced than any printed calendar. The loss of this knowledge reveals a profound shift in how we relate to time. Modern life has severed us from these organic cues, replacing the owl's hoot with smartphone notifications. But traces persist. Marine biologists note how traditional Pacific Islanders still navigate by the flight paths of terns, birds that reliably head toward land at dusk. And science increasingly confirms what indigenous cultures always knew. Starlings adjust their evening roosts based on atmospheric pressure, making them natural barometers. Perhaps the deepest lesson lies in recognizing that time wasn't just something to measure, but something to witness, written in the flutter of wings, the rustle of grazing herds, the silent dance of predator and prey. Now consider how these natural rhythms translated into structured timekeeping when cultures began dividing the day itself. Ancient Egypt didn't just track hours, they named them after celestial events and daily activities. Their hour of lighting lamps marked twilight, while the hour of driving off cattle signaled midday heat. These weren't arbitrary labels but reflections of life's pulse, each segment tied to tangible moments. The Romans took this further, dividing daylight into 12 equal parts, but with a twist. Their temporal hours stretched longer in summer and shorter in winter, bending time to the sun's will rather than forcing nature into human-imposed rigidity. The brilliance of these systems lay in their flexibility. A Babylonian shepherd knew the watch of the first stars meant it was time to pen the flock, regardless of how many minutes had passed. Japanese incense clocks released different scents at intervals: pine at dawn, sandalwood at noon, creating an olfactory map of the day. This wasn't just about utility, it was about harmony. Modern time zones, by contrast, impose uniformity where none exists. Noon in Madrid feels nothing like noon in Mumbai, yet our clocks insist they're identical. Ancient divisions honored locality, acknowledging that time, like culture, is deeply rooted in place. What emerges is a startling realization. The more precisely we've learned to measure time, the more we've lost touch with its essence. Atomic clocks may count vibrations of cesium atoms, but they can't tell us when the figs will ripen or when the geese will migrate. Animals and ancient cultures understood time as a conversation, a dynamic exchange between earth, sky, and living beings. In our quest for control, we've traded dialogue for monologue, forgetting that the truest clocks were never built by hands, but evolved with feathers, fur, and fins. Imagine a world where an hour wasn't always 60 minutes, where time stretched like taffy in summer and snapped tight in winter. This was the reality of unequal hours, a system where daylight split into 12 parts that swelled and shrank with the seasons. In July, an hour might last 75 modern minutes under the languid Mediterranean sun, while December squeezed it down to 45. The Egyptians didn't just invent this system, they baked it into their obelisks, whose shadows traced these elastic hours across temple courtyards. Roman sundials followed suit, their hour lines spaced wider in winter, tighter in summer, a visual dance with the sun's shifting arc. What made unequal hours revolutionary wasn't their complexity, but their practicality. A farmer's sixth hour always meant mid-afternoon heat, whether that spanned 50 minutes or 80. Laborers didn't watch clocks, they worked until the shadows told them to rest. Monks chanting the divine office knew the ninth hour would always fall mid-afternoon, even if the interval from prime varied. This was time molded around human needs, not the other way around. The beauty lay in its adaptability. Mediterranean cultures, with their stark seasonal light changes, embraced unequal hours most fiercely. A Venetian glassblower in January might work 3 unequal hours before dusk, while his June counterpart labored through 5. Yet both experienced the same proportional rhythm: morning, midday, evening stretched or compressed like an accordion. Even mealtimes flexed. Historical records show Florentine diners eating at the 4th hour year-round, though the actual clock time shifted. But unequal hours did more than organize labor, they shaped thought itself. Medieval manuscripts refer to dreams occurring in the last hour of night, a span that lengthened in winter darkness, offering more time for contemplation. The Islamic concept of Asr prayer timed by shadow length still carries echoes of this flexibility. Unlike our rigid 60-minute blocks, these hours breathed with life's unpredictability. A sudden summer storm might make the 11th hour drag. Winter's early dusk compressed the day's closing acts. The system's downfall came with mechanical clocks, which demanded uniform hours to function smoothly. Yet traces remain. Modern fishermen still plan trips by tide hours, which vary daily with the moon's pull. Parents of newborns relearn unequal time instinctively, nights stretching interminably, daylight hours blurring together. Perhaps the deepest wisdom of this ancient system was its recognition. Time isn't a grid to impose, but a river to navigate, its currents changing with the tilt of the earth itself. Now consider the seismic shift when gears and pendulums began dictating time's beat, a story not just of technology, but of humanity's growing divide from nature's rhythms. The rhythmic dripping of water clocks gave way to the relentless ticking of gears, a sound that would forever alter humanity's relationship with time. Those first mechanical clocks in medieval monasteries weren't just technological marvels. They were spiritual alarms, their iron bells pulling monks from sleep for nocturnal prayers with inhuman regularity. No longer swayed by the moon's glow or winter's lingering darkness, these iron-hearted timekeepers sliced nights into identical segments, their swinging pendulums insisting divine order could be measured in uniform strokes. Yet efficiency came at a cost. As tower clocks spread across European cities, their faces staring down at market squares, time became something imposed rather than observed. Guilds fined workers for tardiness measured in mechanical minutes rather than daylight's natural arc. The ancient flexibility of temporal hours, where a summer hour stretched leisurely, was crushed beneath the weight of wheels and weights. A baker who once judged oven temperatures by the angle of sunlight now raced against a minute hand, his bread's quality sacrificed to the clock's demands. What's startling is how quickly this mechanical tyranny took hold. By 1400, the city of Lyons fined public clock keepers whose devices strayed more than 30 minutes per week, a precision unimaginable in the age of sundials. Venice's famed clock tower didn't just display hours, it orchestrated ship launches, market openings, and even execution schedules with grim efficiency. Time, once a river flowing with seasonal currents, had been dammed into a grid of identical segments. But here's the paradox: these early clocks were still deeply tied to nature's rhythms. The very word clock comes from the Celtic clocka, meaning bell, a nod to how monastic timekeeping harmonized with celestial patterns. The earliest tower clocks were painstakingly reset daily using sundials, their mechanical gears forced to bow to solar reality. Even the pendulum, perfected by Huygens in 1656, owed its regularity to gravity, an invisible tether to the natural world. Now consider water clocks again, not as primitive precursors, but as sophisticated alternatives we prematurely abandoned. The greatest of these, like the Tower of Winds in Athens, weren't just timekeepers but hydrological computers. Their carefully calibrated flows could account for seasonal variations automatically, adjusting hours as daylight waxed and waned. Chinese water clocks added mercury in winter to prevent freezing, proving ancient engineers understood adaptability better than we credit. While mechanical clocks enslaved societies to rigid schedules, water clocks had offered something radical: time that breathed with the world around it. Perhaps the most profound loss was in how we perceived time itself. A dripping clepsydrae made time feel fluid. You could watch water pool, hear each drop's rhythm. But the mechanical clock's ticking created an illusion of time as segmented, disposable. Seconds became commodities to spend or waste, a mindset that birthed modern productivity culture with all its stress. The irony: our atomic clocks now rely on quantum vibrations, bringing timekeeping full circle back to nature's oscillations, just as water once pulsed with the moon's pull. The lesson whispers through history: we divorced time from nature at our peril, and the path back lies in remembering how to let it flow. Ancient China's water clocks weren't just containers dripping water. They were intricate machines that blurred the line between nature and human invention. Picture a towering clepsydrae in the imperial court, its bronze gears turning silently as water flowed through meticulously calibrated chambers. At precise intervals, a hammer would strike a bell, announcing the hour with resonant clarity, while miniature figurines of officials rotated in a stately procession. This wasn't just timekeeping, it was mechanical theater, a marriage of artistry and engineering that predated Europe's clock towers by centuries. What made these devices revolutionary was their escapement mechanism, a clever system of weights and levers that regulated the water's flow with astonishing consistency. The Tang dynasty's heavenly clock, built in 725 C, could maintain accuracy within 15 minutes per day, rivaling medieval mechanical clocks. But here's what's truly remarkable. These weren't isolated marvels. The Song dynasty's cosmic engine clock tower, designed by the polymath Su Song in 1088, stood over 30 feet tall with a bronze armillary sphere tracking stars and puppets performing at each hour. Water-powered gears kept the celestial model in perfect sync with the heavens, creating a working model of the universe itself. This technology did more than tell time. It redefined humanity's relationship with precision. For the first time, hours could be measured identically day and night, regardless of clouds or season. Buddhist monasteries used scaled-down versions to regulate meditation sessions, while imperial astronomers calibrated them against celestial events to refine calendars. The real stroke of genius, these clocks self-adjusted. Seasonal temperature changes that would alter water's viscosity were compensated for by adjustable flow gates, an ancient analog to modern temperature-compensated quartz. Yet what's often overlooked is how these inventions bridged cultures. Islamic scholars visiting China brought back water clock designs that evolved into the famous elephant clock of Al-Jazari, which used Greek hydraulics, Indian automata, and Chinese escapements. The lesson buried in these dripping marvels is profound. Innovation has always been a global conversation, with each civilization adding its verse to timekeeping's epic poem. Now imagine time told not by gears or water, but by fragrance where hours passed as ribbons of sandalwood smoke curled toward the ceiling. Incense clocks transformed time into an experience for all five senses, where hours passed not as silent numbers, but as drifting veils of sandalwood, patchouli, and myrrh. Picture a Tang dynasty scholar in his moonlit study, the air thick with the earthy sweetness of burning incense. As each aromatic segment smoldered away, the changing fragrances marked the night's progression. Lotus at dusk, clove at midnight, amber at dawn. These weren't mere timers, they were atmospheric compositions blending measurement with meditation. In Japan's Heian period, aristocrats used a jinko incense clocks during poetry gatherings, where the shifting scents became part of the artistic ritual. A guest might compose a verse inspired by the moment cedar gave way to cinnamon. What set these devices apart was their elegant duality. A single stick could function as a simple hourglass alternative, while elaborate incense seal clocks traced intricate patterns on bronze plates, their powdered aromatics burning along maze-like grooves for up to 12 hours. Temples employed giant wheel versions, where different woods corresponded to prayer intervals. Monks knew to chant the Heart Sutra when the pine segment began its slow curl of smoke. But here's the genius: these clocks engaged memory in ways modern devices can't. Studies show scent triggers deeper recall than visual or auditory cues. A merchant associating jasmine with midday would internalize time more intuitively than someone checking a smartphone. The contrast with today's timekeeping couldn't be sharper. Digital clocks demand attention with jarring beeps, while incense clocks worked peripherally. Their presence felt rather than watched. A Ming dynasty doctor might diagnose patients by their pulse as plum blossom incense burned, the fragrance's pace mirroring the body's rhythms. Tea masters timed steepings to the smoldering of a losewood, its resinous notes deepening alongside the brew's flavor. This was timekeeping as art form, where precision coexisted with poetry. Now shift from scented chambers to the rolling decks of ancient ships, where neither incense nor sundials could keep pace with the waves. Sailors faced a unique challenge. how to measure time when the horizon was endless water and the stars their only fixed points. The open ocean was humanity's first true time machine, a vast, trackless expanse where the sun and stars became the only reliable guides. Without landmarks or fixed shadows, sailors developed ingenious ways to measure time and distance using the world around them. Polynesian navigators, crossing thousands of miles in double-hulled canoes, didn't just memorize star paths, they read the ocean itself. The way swells bent around islands created subtle patterns in the water, like fingerprints on the sea's surface. Certain birds, like the white terns of the Pacific, flew out to fish at dawn and returned at dusk, their flight paths acting as living compasses. These weren't just tricks, they were a language of survival, where every ripple and cloud formation told part of a story. Sandglasses filled with pulverized eggshells for smoother flow became the heartbeat of shipboard life. Turned every half hour by cabin boys, their rhythmic flipping marked the watches that divided the crew's shifts. But here's what's fascinating, these glasses weren't used alone. Sailors paired them with knotted ropes tossed overboard, the famous log and line. As the ship moved, knots in the rope would slip through a sailor's fingers at regular intervals, revealing speed in knots, a term still used today. Time and distance merged into a single calculation, written in hemp and sand. Yet the true marvel was celestial reckoning. Under clear skies, navigators used a camel, a simple wooden card with a knotted string, to measure the angle of stars above the horizon. Arab traders could pinpoint their latitude within miles by holding the string to their teeth and aligning the card with Polaris. The Vikings, navigating foggy northern seas, carried sunstones, crystals of calcite that polarized sunlight, revealing the sun's position even through dense clouds. These methods required more than skill. They demanded a visceral connection to the environment. A Polynesian wayfinder could feel the shift in wave patterns beneath the canoe's hull, sensing invisible islands beyond the horizon. What we've lost in the GPS age isn't just these techniques, but the mindset behind them. Modern navigation happens on screens, divorcing us from the tactile poetry of reading waves or tracing star paths. Ancient mariners didn't just know the time, they felt it in the salt spray, saw it in the moon's glow on midnight swells. Their timekeeping wasn't separate from the world, it was the world speaking to them. Now shift from the rolling decks to the human body itself, where time isn't measured in knots or stars, but in heartbeats and hunger pangs. Long before alarm clocks shattered our sleep, the human body kept its own time, a rhythm etched into our biology by millennia of sunrises and sunsets. Circadian rhythms aren't just about feeling sleepy at night. They're the invisible conductors orchestrating everything from hormone release to digestion, syncing us with the Earth's rotation. Ancient cultures didn't need scientists to explain this, they lived it. The Romans divided their day into vigiliae, nighttime watches timed to the body's natural dips in alertness. Japanese tea masters scheduled ceremonies for mid-morning, when the mind is most receptive to quiet focus. Even pre-industrial farmers rose with the first sleep of early night, awakened for a few hours of contemplation or storytelling, then drifted into second sleep until dawn, a pattern modern sleep researchers now recognize as biologically innate. What's startling is how precisely these rhythms map to the environment. The Gwai people of Botswana still time their hunting by the body's post-dawn cortisol peak, when focus is sharpest. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine in India prescribes meals and activities based on dosha cycles, times of day when certain bodily processes dominate. This wasn't superstition, it was hyper-observance. Modern studies confirm digestion enzymes peak at noon, aligning with Mediterranean culture's largest meal at midday. while melatonin rises as temperatures drop, explaining why Nordic societies perfected the art of the evening sauna. Yet artificial light bulldozed this delicate balance. The moment gas lamps brightened London's streets in the early 1800s, humanity began divorcing time from biology. Today, blue-lit screens trick our pineal glands into suppressing melatonin, while night shifts force organs to work when they should rest. The consequences are profound. Disrupted circadian rhythms linked to higher risks of diabetes, depression, even cancer. But here's the hopeful twist: ancient wisdom is getting a scientific second look. Chronobiologists now prescribe light hygiene, mimicking our ancestors' exposure to sunrise and firelight's warm spectrum. Some hospitals time medications to patients' internal clocks, reviving the Greek concept of kairos, the right moment for action. This brings us to shadows, nature's oldest timekeepers. While our bodies tracked time internally, architecture externalized it. The Anasazi of Choco Canyon designed their pueblos so winter solstice sunlight pierced specific windows, illuminating spiral petroglyphs like a stone sundial. In Yemen's Shibam, towering mud brick skyscrapers cast cooling shadows that moved like clock hands across streets, signaling when markets should open or close. These weren't just clever designs, they were dialogues between human habitats and celestial mechanics. A Venetian palazzo's loggia might shade its courtyard precisely at noon, while a Kyoto tea house positioned eaves to filter autumn light differently than summer's, each shadow a seasonal marker. The magic lay in shadow timekeeping's accessibility. Unlike water clocks requiring maintenance or incense needing replenishment, shadows democratized time. A Persian carpet weaver could glance at the shifting pattern on her loom to know when to pause for prayers. Gothic cathedrals like Chartres embedded meridian lines in their floors, where a sunbeam would touch brass inlays at solar noon, aligning sacred space with cosmic time. Even children played shadow games, using their own bodies as rudimentary sundials. This was timekeeping stripped to its essence. No gears, no fluids, just the interplay of light and obstruction. Perhaps that's the ultimate lesson. Whether through circadian rhythms or architectural shadows, our ancestors understood time as a collaboration with nature, not a conquest. Modern life may have severed those connections, but the templates remain written in our cells and etched in stone, waiting for us to rediscover their syncopated beat. Stonehenge's towering slabs didn't just frame the sunrise, they captured the cosmos in stone. When dawn light pierced the heel stone at summer solstice, illuminating the altar's center, it wasn't just a celestial event, it was a calendar carved from bedrock. The Maya took this further, designing pyramids like El Castillo at Chichen Itza, so the equinox sun cast a serpent-shaped shadow slithering down its steps. These weren't monuments with timekeeping features, they were clocks themselves, their very angles encoding astronomical knowledge. Medieval cathedrals turned stained glass into solar almanacs. Chartres Cathedral's labyrinth aligns so the summer solstice sun paints a golden path across its stones, while Newgrange's passage tomb in Ireland funnels winter solstice light into its deepest chamber for 17 minutes, a precision modern lasers struggle to replicate. This architectural timekeeping did more than mark seasons. It wove time into sacred spaces. Pilgrims visiting St. Peter's Basilica would see noon light strike a meridian line on the floor, synchronizing prayer with the heavens. The Anasazi at Choco Canyon engineered their pueblos so sunlight daggered through windows to mark lunar standstills, events occurring only every 18 years. What's breathtaking is how these designs serve dual purposes. The Mayan Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza functioned as both temple and astronomical tool. Its narrow windows framed Venus's extremes, guiding planting and warfare. In Jaipur, India, the Jantar Mantar's gargantuan sundials could tell time down to 2 seconds, yet their curves also mapped astrological charts. These structures didn't just measure time, they made it tangible, communal. When villagers gathered at Stonehenge for solstice dawn, they weren't just spectators, they were participants in a cosmic rhythm, their presence completing the clock's design. The deeper genius lay in localization. While obelisks worked best near the equator, Inuit snow houses used winter light angles to mark sun return days. Venetian palaces positioned loggias so summer shadows cooled interiors precisely when heat peaked. Every culture adapted timekeeping architecture to its landscape and needs, proving time wasn't universal but deeply personal. Now consider how these stone calendars influenced daily life. The Torre del Mangia in Siena, Italy, casts a shadow that bisects the Piazza del Campo at noon, signaling market closures, a practice unchanged since the 1300s. In Ottoman mosques, mihrab niches were often angled so the muezzin's dawn call coincided with the first light striking the Qibla wall. This was timekeeping as lived experience, where the built environment didn't just tell hours but shaped routines, rituals, even laws. Yet architectural timekeeping's true legacy is its durability. While water clocks dried up and incense burned away, these stone sentinels still mark solstices millennia after their builders vanished. The lesson whispers through the ages. The most profound clocks aren't devices but dialogues between earth and sky, shadow and light, humanity and eternity. Now shift from these monumental timepieces to the intimate ways ancient cultures divided their days because an hour in Babylon looked nothing like an hour in Kyoto. The Babylonians didn't just count hours, they revolutionized time itself with their base 60 system, a mathematical masterpiece that still echoes in our 60-minute hours and 60-second minutes today. This wasn't arbitrary. Their love for the number 60 came from its elegant divisibility. Split it by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, or 30, and you're left with whole numbers. Imagine a world where every meeting or meal could be divided without fractions, pure practicality etched into the fabric of time. But while the Babylonians were slicing the celestial pie into 60ths, halfway across the world, the Chinese were weaving time into the very essence of life with their 12 double hours. Each 2-hour block bore the name of an animal: the rat hour for midnight's quiet cunning, the horse hour for noon's unbridled energy. This wasn't just measurement, it was mythology in motion, where the rhythm of the day mirrored the personalities of the zodiac. These systems reveal a stunning truth. Time was never just numbers on a dial. For the Babylonians, it was geometry, a circle divided like the petals of a flower. For the Chinese, it was biography, each hour a character in the day's unfolding story. Even night watchmen in medieval Europe sang the hours, their chimes turning time into melody. Compare that to today's digital displays where identical numerals blink indifferently in every time zone. Ancient cultures didn't just track time, they gave it texture, color, and voice. The social impact of these pre-clock systems ran deep. Without standardized hours, villages operated on natural time. Bakers started kneading at first light, not because a clock demanded it, but because the wheat rose best with dawn's moisture. Spanish siestas weren't laziness, they were solar logic, avoiding the midday heat when shadows shrank to nothing. In Japan, the Toki system divided daylight and darkness into 6 equal parts each, so summer days had longer hours than winter ones. This elastic sense of time nurtured patience. A field wasn't harvested because the clock said so, but because the grain bowed heavy under its own ripeness. Perhaps the most radical difference was in how these systems valued time. The Incas used knotted strings called quippers to record events, with colors representing different types of activities, not durations. Time wasn't spent, it was lived. When the Maya calculated Venus's cycles with jaw-dropping precision, they weren't racing against a clock, they were dancing with the cosmos. Modern life, with its punch cards and productivity apps, has turned time into a commodity, but these ancient methods remind us it was once a conversation with the sun, the soil, and each other. Now consider the human cost of abandoning these rhythms. Studies show workers in rigid 9-to-5 schedules experience more stress than those aligned with natural light cycles. Chronobiologists find teenagers' brains wake later, yet schools start earlier, a mismatch ancient cultures would have avoided. The real genius of pre-clock timekeeping wasn't in its mechanisms, but in its mindfulness. When a sundial's shadow lengthened, it didn't just mark an hour. It whispered that light was fading, that rest was coming. A water clock's drip wasn't just a tick, it was the pulse of a river flowing through daily life. The challenge now isn't to abandon modern clocks, but to reclaim that lost wisdom, to let office schedules flex with winter's early dusks, to design cities where streetlights mimic moonlight's soothing glow. After all, the stars still rise whether we watch them or not. The question is, will we keep time or let time keep us? Time flowed differently in ancient societies, not as a rigid grid of appointments, but as a river bending to the contours of human need and natural cycles. Without factory whistles or punch clocks, harvests continued until the last sheaf was gathered, storytellers spoke until the fire burned low, and festivals danced on until the stars signaled it was time to rest. The Roman tempus continuum recognized this fluidity, dividing days into periods for business and leisure that stretched or shrank with the season's light. In traditional Balinese culture, the concept of jam carrot, rubber time, still allows ceremonies to unfold organically, their duration dictated by the completion of rituals rather than the hands of a clock. This wasn't laziness, it was wisdom. What modern psychology now confirms our ancestors knew instinctively: flexible time reduces stress and nurtures connection. Medieval guilds set work hours by daylight, with winter breaks when frost made labor impossible, a natural rhythm mirrored in animals' hibernation cycles. The Yakut people of Siberia still follow biological time, scheduling tasks based on energy levels and weather rather than arbitrary deadlines. Contrast this with today's always-on culture, where burnout thrives under the weight of back-to-back calendar invites. Ancient societies protected something we've forgotten. Time's true purpose isn't just productivity, but presence. When Spanish siestas paused work during peak heat or Japanese tea ceremonies unfolded without rush, they honored a truth our smartwatches ignore: that quality matters more than quantity. Shared timekeeping also wove communities tighter. The Incas' communal labor system, MITA, synchronized planting and building projects by celestial cues, turning work into collective celebration. Celtic festivals like Beltane lasted not for scheduled hours, but until the last ember of the bonfire faded, a reminder that some bonds can't be measured in minutes. Even the Islamic call to prayer, echoing from minarets at slightly varied times depending on the muezzin's observation of twilight, created a gentle, localized rhythm absent from our standardized time zones. The cost of abandoning this flexibility is stark. Studies show workers in rigid 9-to-5 structures experience higher cortisol levels than those with control over their schedules. Schools forcing teens to learn during biological sleep cycles see poorer retention, something the ancient Greeks avoided by holding philosophy debates in the afternoon when minds were sharpest. Perhaps the most profound loss is in how we gather. modern weddings race against venue contracts, while ancient Vedic ceremonies unfolded over 7 days, each ritual given the space it demanded. The Maori-Hui meetings still continue until every voice is heard, however long that takes. Yet traces of this wisdom persist. Siesta cultures report lower heart disease rates. Companies adopting 4-day workweeks see productivity rise. The lesson isn't to abandon clocks, but to remember their tools, not tyrants. Time, our ancestors understood, is the canvas of life, not the frame. Now, watch how shadows transformed from simple markers into the world's first astronomical computers. The Greeks didn't just cast shadows, they decoded them. A simple gnomon, a stick planted upright in the earth, became their most sophisticated scientific instrument. By tracking the subtle dance of its shadow, they calculated Earth's circumference with an error margin of just 2%, an astonishing feat for 250 BC. But their genius didn't stop there. These shadow sticks doubled as celestial calendars, marking solstices when the noon shadow stretched longest or shortest, and equinoxes when it pointed due west without a hint of curve. Temples like the Tower of the Winds in Athens turned entire buildings into shadow computers, their walls etched with lines that mapped constellations as they passed overhead. What made shadow astronomy revolutionary was its accessibility. Unlike water clocks requiring maintenance or astrolabes demanding expertise, anyone could plant a stick and start observing. Farmers used gnomons to time planting seasons, noting how the shadow's midday angle shifted week by week. Sailors carved notches on ship rails, using their own bodies as makeshift gnomons to estimate latitude from shadow length. Even children played games tracing shadow paths with pebbles, learning celestial mechanics through their fingertips. This was science stripped to its essence: no gears, no glass, just sunlight and soil. Yet shadows offered more than measurements. They revealed cosmic patterns invisible to the naked eye. The Greek astronomer Meton discovered the 19-year lunar cycle by comparing gnomon records, realizing that moon phases repeated over this metonic cycle with uncanny precision. His findings refined calendars across the Mediterranean, proving that the humblest tool could unlock heavenly secrets. Meanwhile, in China, court astronomers used Gui Bairo, elaborate gnomon arrays, to determine the exact length of the solar year, correcting imperial calendars down to minutes. The true brilliance of shadow astronomy lay in its duality. A gnomon's shadow wasn't just a data point, it was a bridge between Earth and sky. When Eratosthenes measured Earth's curvature by comparing shadows in Alexandria and Syene, he didn't just solve a mathematical puzzle, he proved humanity could comprehend the cosmos through observation alone. Centuries later, Galileo would echo this spirit with his telescopes, but the foundation had been laid by sticks and sunlight. Now, shift from these silent shadows to the crackling urgency of fire, where time wasn't just observed but performed. Ritual flames transformed measurement into ceremony, marking moments through combustion's primal theater. The Zoroastrians kept sacred fires burning in precise tiers. Atash Bayram flames required 16 different kinds of wood, each added at specific lunar phases. In Rome, Vestal virgins tended eternal flames whose condition was believed to mirror the empire's fate. Their flickering watched like a divine clock. Fire didn't just mark time, it embodied it. Every ember's glow a countdown, every wisp of smoke a breath of history. Unlike shadow's quiet geometry, fire timekeeping engaged all senses. Celtic Beltane bonfires heralded summer's start with roaring heat and resin-scented smoke, while Tibetan monks stilled time meditations by how long a butter lamp takes to gutter. The Olmec carved hourglass-shaped braziers that channeled airflow to burn copal resin at predictable rates, their incense tracking ceremonies like aromatic metronomes. This multisensory approach made time visceral. You could feel a watchfire's warmth fade as the night deepened, or taste the salt thrown into flames to make them flare at critical moments. The precision achieved with fire might surprise modern audiences. Byzantine night candles embedded with metal pellets would clatter into bronze trays at fixed intervals, acting as alarm clocks for city guards. Medieval scholars filled eggshells with powdered coal, creating slow-burning fuses that timed experiments to within minutes. But fire's greatest gift was its flexibility. A torch could be held aloft to prolong its burn, or angled downward to hasten it, allowing on-the-fly adjustments no sundial could match. Perhaps the most poetic fire clocks were the Chinese incense seals, where trails of powdered sandalwood smoldered through grooved plates, their intricate paths lasting exactly 12 hours. As each segment burned, its unique fragrance signaled a new double hour: pine at dawn, cassia at noon, musk at dusk. This wasn't just timekeeping, it was alchemy, transforming minutes into perfume. Temples employed giant wheel versions where burning threads triggered chimes, their resonance carrying across valleys to synchronize distant villages. What fire and shadows shared was a recognition that time couldn't be severed from the physical world. A sundial's shadow lengthening across stones or a candle's wax pooling at its base. These weren't abstract measurements but embodied experiences. Modern atomic clocks may count cesium vibrations with unimaginable accuracy, but they'll never replicate the intuition of a shepherd gauging midnight by how many embers remain in the watchfire, or a child learning seasons by the way their shadow stretches at noon. These ancient methods worked because they didn't just tell time, they made us feel it in our bones and breath as part of the living world. Sacred fires didn't just mark time, they transformed it into something holy, a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Picture the eternal flames of Zoroastrian temples, where priests fed sandalwood and myrrh to fires that burned for centuries without fading. These weren't mere light sources, they were living clocks, their flickering tongues believed to carry prayers to the heavens while mirroring the cosmic order. Each fire leveled from the humble Atash Dadga in homes to the exalted Atash Bayram, requiring 16 sacred fuels, marked different tiers of time's sanctity. The rituals around them were precise. 3 times a day, priests would rearrange the logs to keep the flames steady, their movements synchronized with celestial events. This wasn't just maintenance, it was timekeeping as worship, where every ember's crackle echoed the universe's heartbeat. Other cultures wove fire into their calendars with equal reverence. In Rome, the Vestal Virgins guarded a flame said to protect the empire's fate. Its extinction signaled catastrophe. The Aztecs lit new fire ceremonies every 52 years, extinguishing all hearths first, then igniting a fresh blaze in a prisoner's chest, a brutal but profound reset of time's cycle. Even the Jewish menorah's 7 branches originally burned olive oil in meticulously timed increments, its light lasting exactly through the darkest nights. These practices shared a common thread. Fire didn't just measure moments, it consecrated them. Unlike today's sterile digital displays, sacred flames made time tactile, ephemeral, and alive, a reminder that each passing second was both a gift and a sacrifice. The contrast with modern timekeeping couldn't be starker. Where atomic clocks count in different seconds, temple fires pulsed with intention. Hindu arti ceremonies still swing lamps before deities, their circular motions symbolizing time's endless cycle. In Tibet, butter lamps illuminate monasteries not just to mark hours but to embody the impermanence those hours contain. This sacred dimension of time, where measurement intertwined with meaning, has largely vanished from our secular schedules. We've gained precision but lost poetry, trading the crackle of kindling for the silent blink of LEDs. Yet fire's most astonishing role wasn't just marking time, it was predicting celestial events. Priests from Babylon to Teotihuacan studied smoke patterns, believing the gods spoke through flames dance. The ancient Greeks observed how eclipses altered firelight's behavior, noting how shadows sharpened as the moon swallowed the sun. These weren't superstitions, they were early scientific inquiries. The Maya timed their eclipse warnings by observing how ceremonial fires dimmed under specific lunar phases, their predictions accurate to within hours centuries before telescopes. Which brings us to the ultimate celestial clockwork, eclipses. Long before Newton's laws, cultures worldwide decoded these celestial ballets with nothing but patience and naked eyes. Eclipse prediction wasn't just astronomy, it was cosmic diplomacy. The Maya didn't merely track the moon's path, they built entire calendars around its dance with the sun, carving their observations into temple walls with razor-sharp precision. At Chichen Itza, the El Castillo pyramid becomes a serpent of shadow during equinoxes, but its real genius lies hidden. The structure's staircases count the days between eclipses, with each step representing a celestial interval. Their Dresden Codex, a bark paper book surviving centuries of humidity, contains eclipse tables accurate to within a day over spans of 32 years. This wasn't guesswork, it was mathematics so advanced it took modern astronomers until the 1960s to fully decipher their calculations. Babylonian clay tablets tell a similar story. Over 700 years of recorded observations carefully noting when the moon bit the sun revealed the Saros cycle, an 18-year pattern where eclipses repeat. Their scholars didn't just record these events, they weaponized them. Kings like Nebuchadnezzar used eclipse predictions to awe subjects and enemies alike, claiming divine insight. A tablet from Uruk even warns of an eclipse's omen. If the moon is eclipsed on the 21st day, the king will die and his son will not take the throne. Timekeeping here wasn't about productivity. It was about power, the ultimate demonstration that those who mastered celestial rhythms held sway over human destiny. Yet these ancient astronomers faced limitations modern clocks erased. Without minute precision, eclipse predictions remained fuzzy around the edges. A Maya priest might know an eclipse was coming within a week, but not the exact hour, problematic when claiming to commune with gods. Cloudy skies could obscure critical observations, breaking chains of data, and the sheer mental labor. Babylonian scribes needed lifetimes to compile enough observations for reliable patterns, their knowledge fragile as the clay it was etched on. Compare that to today's atomic clocks, where eclipse predictions pop up in apps with casual precision, no decades of stargazing required. The shift from celestial to mechanical timekeeping came with trade-offs. Ancient methods tied time to tangible phenomena. You could see the moon's shadow creeping toward the sun. Modern clocks abstract time into invisible seconds, divorcing it from the sensory world. Farmers once planted by the Pleiades rising, now they check weather apps. The Maya's eclipse tables connected them to cosmic forces. Our digital calendars rarely glance beyond next week's meetings. We've gained precision but lost a visceral connection to time's grand cycles, the difference between watching a river flow and staring at a water meter. Perhaps the most profound loss was in how pre-clock timekeeping fostered patience. Tracking a Saros cycle required generations of scribes passing down meticulous records. The Maya's long count calendar spanned over 5,000 years, a time frame making modern 5-year plans seem myopic. This long-view perspective shaped cultures differently. Where we see time as linear and scarce, they saw it as cyclical and abundant. The Babylonians didn't fret over wasting a day. They understood some knowledge only ripens over centuries, yet for all their brilliance, these systems couldn't escape human flaws. Eclipse predictions became tools of control, with priests hoarding knowledge to manipulate the masses. The Aztec Zu-Po-Huale calendar, while accurate, justified human sacrifice by aligning it with solar events. And when Spanish conquistadors arrived during an eclipse, Montezuma's astronomers had foretold it, but couldn't foresee how invaders would exploit their celestial faith. Timekeeping's history isn't just one of progress, but of how societies weaponize rhythm, turning cosmic order into social control. Now consider the pendulum swing, literally. As Europe shifted from celestial to mechanical time, something fundamental changed in humanity's relationship with hours and minutes. For all their elegance, ancient timekeeping methods carried unavoidable flaws, especially when the skies refused to cooperate. A sundial's precision vanished beneath thick clouds, leaving farmers and merchants guessing at the hour. Water clocks froze in winter, their carefully calibrated drips silenced by frost. Even celestial navigation faltered under stormy skies, leaving sailors adrift without the stars' guidance. These weren't occasional inconveniences, but fundamental cracks in systems built entirely on nature's cooperation. Travelers faced another headache. Every town kept its own time. A merchant journeying from Alexandria to Rome might pass through half a dozen local time systems, each set by the nearest sundial's reading. Coastal cities often timed tides differently based on which lunar cycle they followed. This patchwork worked fine for isolated communities but collapsed as trade routes expanded. When Marco Polo described Chinese water clocks to Europeans, their intricate gears seemed miraculous precisely because they offered something sundials couldn't: consistency across latitudes and weather conditions. The deeper limitation lay in precision. While a Babylonian astronomer could predict eclipses within days, timing a merchant's loan payment to the hour required mechanical reliability. Temple rituals might tolerate a water clock's gradual slowdown as sediment built up, but bank transactions couldn't. The Mayan long count calendar tracked millennia with breathtaking accuracy, yet their daily timekeeping relied on crude shadow lengths that varied by season. These systems harmonized beautifully with nature but struggled with humanity's growing demand for exactitude, a demand that would birth the escapement mechanism and, eventually, the ticking heart of modern clocks. Yet before we dismiss these methods as obsolete, consider their hidden strengths. Ancient timekeepers didn't just measure minutes, they cultivated awareness. A farmer watching the Pleiades rise knew not just when to plant, but how the cosmos connected to his fields. The Islamic practice of timing prayers by shadow length kept entire communities attuned to daylight's rhythm. In our age of atomic precision, we've gained synchronization but lost synchronization, the ability to feel time's passage in our bones rather than just read it on a screen. The shift to mechanical time wasn't just technological but philosophical. Clock towers didn't merely tell hours, they centralized authority, replacing nature's variability with human-imposed order. Factories would later exploit this rigidity, whistles regimenting lives into shifts measured in minutes rather than tasks completed. Yet traces of ancient wisdom persist. Chronobiologists now advocate for work schedules aligned with circadian rhythms, essentially returning to the body's natural clock. Marine navigators still learn celestial techniques as backups to GPS. The pendulum may have swung toward precision, but it's swinging back toward balance. Perhaps the real lesson lies in recognizing that no single system holds all the answers. The Maya star calendars and medieval Europe's clock towers each solved different problems. Our challenge isn't to reject modern timekeeping, but to reintegrate its best aspects with the organic wisdom we cast aside. After all, the ancients didn't lack precision, they prioritized harmony. In a world drowning in notifications yet starved for presence, their greatest gift may be reminding us that time isn't just something to count, but something to live. The relentless ticking of modern clocks has severed us from something profound, the natural rhythms that once guided every aspect of human life. But what if the solution to today's epidemic of burnout and environmental strain lies not in more precise timekeeping, but in rediscovering the fluid wisdom of ancient systems? Consider the growing movement toward circadian workplaces. Companies like Germany's Reagan's digital enabler, where employees set schedules based on personal energy peaks rather than rigid 9-to-5 shifts. Their productivity soared while stress levels plummeted, echoing the Myers practice of aligning tasks with daylight intensity. Seasonal living is making a similar comeback, with Nordic friluftsliv culture encouraging winter hibernation and summer activity bursts, mirroring how ancient Romans divided their year into otium leisure months and negotium work months. The environmental benefits are equally striking. Pre-industrial societies wasted nothing because their timekeeping was inherently sustainable. Sundials required no batteries, water clocks recycled their fluids, and incense clocks returned nutrients to the earth as ash. Compare that to today's digital devices, where the average smartphone's manufacturing emits 60 kilograms of CO2, and server farms keeping global clocks synchronized consume more electricity than some nations. Ancient methods worked with nature rather than against it, a lesson echoed in modern, slow-tech movements advocating solar-powered watches and analog meeting reminders. Perhaps most revolutionary is how these systems honored time's subjectivity. The medieval Islamic world divided daylight into 12 temporal hours that stretched in summer and contracted in winter, respecting the body's natural responses to light. Modern science confirms this wisdom. Studies show workers in flexible daylight-adjusted schedules report higher job satisfaction and lower cortisol levels. Schools experimenting with later start times for teens, aligning with their delayed circadian rhythms, see test scores rise as sharply as the obelisk shadows at noon. This isn't about rejecting technology but restoring balance. Silicon Valley executives now host no-screen sundials, using shadow positions to time digital detoxes. Japanese engineers have revived incense clock principles in aroma alarms that wake users with gentle scent transitions rather than jarring sounds. Even NASA has incorporated circadian lighting on the International Space Station, mimicking Earth's natural light cycles to maintain astronaut health, proving ancient wisdom functions beyond our atmosphere. The ultimate lesson isn't just historical curiosity but urgent relevance. As climate change disrupts seasons and AI accelerates work demands, the rigid mechanical time that fueled the Industrial Revolution may be our greatest liability. Ancient systems offer a blueprint for resilience, teaching us to measure time not in uniform seconds but in adaptive rhythms, to value quality over quantity, and above all, to remember that we are not machines to be optimized but living beings entwined with a living planet. The future of timekeeping might just require us to turn our gaze backward to when hours breathed with the sun and minutes flowered with the moon. From sundials to star paths, ancient timekeeping wasn't just about measuring moments, it was about weaving humanity into the fabric of the cosmos. Every shadow, every dripping water clock, every incense trail carried a silent lesson. Time isn't something to conquer, but a rhythm to harmonize with. Our ancestors didn't battle against the clock, they listened to it, learning when to plant by the tilt of the sun, when to sail by the pull of the tides, when to rest by the depth of the night's darkness. This wasn't primitive guesswork, it was a sophisticated collaboration with the natural world, one that balanced precision with patience, structure with spontaneity. The cost of losing this harmony is all around us. Modern clocks may tick with atomic accuracy, but they've also fragmented our lives into disconnected seconds. We check emails at midnight under artificial light, ignore seasonal fatigue to meet year-round deadlines, and measure productivity in screen time rather than sunsets. The Maya tracked Venus's cycles to align their ceremonies with celestial events. Now, we schedule Zoom meetings without glancing at the sky. The contrast is stark. Ancient timekeeping nurtured presence, while modern timekeeping often demands perpetual distraction. Yet there's hope in the past's wisdom. Around the world, people are quietly reclaiming these rhythms. Chronobiologists advocate for work schedules aligned with daylight, echoing the Roman temporal hours. Parents rediscover the magic of moonlit walks to reset children's sleep cycles, much like the Tlingit timed their hunts by lunar phases. Even corporations experiment with 4-day workweeks, unintentionally mirroring the seasonal rest cycles of medieval farming communities. These aren't nostalgic trends, they're course corrections, proof that our bodies and minds still crave the cadence of a world where time breathes. Imagine a life where deadlines flex with the seasons, where meetings pause when the afternoon sun slants just right, where your phone reminds you to watch the sunset instead of binge another episode. This isn't fantasy, it's possibility. The ancient Egyptians built obelisks to honor the sun's journey, but you can start smaller. Try eating lunch outside when your shadow shrinks to its shortest, or let the first stars cue your evening wind down. The tools are still here, the sun still arcs, the moon still waxes, the birds still sing at dawn. We've just forgotten how to listen. So here's the invitation. Don't just marvel at these ancient systems, borrow from them. Let a sundial's seasonal elasticity remind you that productivity isn't one size fits all. Let the water clock's steady drip inspire you to measure your day in depth, not just speed. And when the weight of modern timekeeping feels oppressive, remember the incense clock's lesson. Even the most fleeting moments can leave a lingering fragrance. The past isn't just history, it's a toolbox for reimagining time. Now it's your turn. How could these ancient rhythms reshape your days? Share your thoughts below. And if you've enjoyed this journey through the ages, subscribe for more mysteries that connect yesterday's wisdom to tomorrow's possibilities. The next tick of the clock doesn't have to be a countdown. It could be the start of a